Yeah, hello, Cloudie here, checking in from the America server, and in this video we are gonna be looking at challenge rate and basically the new system that Vespa implemented a while ago. I've been meaning to do this video for a while now, but due to real life stuff happening I couldn't quite get around to it. There is still a bit of time for this specific Urkak challenge raid, so maybe you guys can find this video helpful and also like the explanation to the new system. So let's move there and let's see how this actually works. What Vespa changed is that now we get each challenge raid boss for 1 month, and in the first 2 weeks we will be fighting it as a group battle, which you probably already know from the challenge raids, and in the second 2 weeks it's a single entry battle, so you can only go in with your own characters, you cannot bring anyone else with you, so you cannot get carried. That's basically the change. In each of these you can earn exchange points from challenge raid, which you can which you can spend in their own shop. Now it's important to note that the group battle has its own shop and the single battle has its own shop. I actually haven't run on this account yet, 2 days left, okay. And you cannot hoard the points, so you need to spend both the team battle points and the single battle points before their own shops expire. Otherwise your remaining points will get converted to stamina potions. The rewards can be pretty nice. I like the other one better because that has a soul weapon selector, but yeah, so do remember to actually use up your points. Now how does this actually work with the whole point system and stuff? As you can see, when you go to creating your room, you can see your clear points here, and this one you can easily modify with your difficulty. You can select 4 difficulty settings from easy to normal, hard and hell. And this will, for instance, select hell. That's a 2.5 modifier, so the 3k points go up to 7.5k points. Now this is still not too much. So the other thing here is that you can select buffs for yourself or debuffs for the boss, which will change your points. So if you pick buffs, then your points will decrease. And do note that the modifier does work here too. So that's not just, as you can see, that's not just 200 points in this case, it gets also modified by this multiplier. And the same goes for the debuffs. So if you start adding debuffs at hell difficulty, you can rank up a lot of points to yourself. It goes all the way to like 62.500k, so 62.5k. That's a lot. But that time the boss becomes pretty hard to do. You will need to have some pretty strong heroes to actually clear it, both in the tanking, the healing and the DPS department. So let's actually see how this actually works, which debuffs there are and which one you should not be picking if you are struggling with the boss. So let's go through all of these and see what they each do. Attack of the boss is increased by 50%. For 300 points this is actually pretty strong, even if you use the multiplier. At hell difficulty with all the other penalties applied, this can be quite devastating. So if you're struggling with your tank dying, you can take this off. At least you won't lose too many points, which you can see this is like barely a little bit of an increase. Increases maximum HP of the boss. Now this is the other thing. On hard difficulty, if you go there, the boss has like 30 something billion health, I believe, and if you apply this it goes to 50 something. Now in hell, with this applied, the boss has like 296 or something stupid like that. So that's quite a big jump from going from hard to hell. And one thing I wanted to tell about multipliers, I have said that in hell mode, if you apply everything, you get like 62k points. In hard you do not get all the penalties, but if you pick all of them that are available, then you can go up to like 30 something, I think almost 40k, which is quite nice actually, because if you do not have the build heroes yeah, you can go to like 39k. But if you do not have the required heroes built, hard is a whole lot more easier than hell, and you should be able to get, like, you can, with this you can still get the for instance the 2 random soul weapons, or you can buy the unique gear selector, so that's quite good to have. Hard is a lot easier to do than hell, so if you are struggling with hell mode and can't get enough points, then maybe you can downgrade to hard and just get your runs in with that. That should make your life a lot more easier. But let's go back to hell and see what other options there are. So the attack of the boss, this should only apply to the boss and not his minions, but yeah, he will hit a lot harder. So if you are struggling with tanking, then take this one off. Increases the HP of the boss. As said, this is a pretty big jump in health. If your DPS is not good enough, you can try taking this one off. It will make the run a lot faster. So if you are running out of time, or you feel like you are not doing enough damage, try and go without these. Now, these 3 will gradually increase the cooldown of all of your characters. So it helps if your DPS is like an auto attack based character. It helps if you bring like odd D4 resets when you need it, or anyone else who can decrease your cooldowns. Generally, these can be applied pretty safely, at least on this challenge raid boss, but there are some moments when it kind of hurts if you have them on. Next one is increases all block of the boss by 1000. There are heroes who can reduce the block chance of the boss, and I actually kind of went without any block reduction when I was doing it on my alts for like 40k something, because they are alts not that well built, but that's good enough. So this one is pretty safe to pick. You should be able to clear even if you pick this one. So let's just click these in, see how far we go. Periodically reduces mana of all allies by 2000. If you have a Shea, then this one is not really a big problem. On Urkak it can be a bit challenging because the tower that he has also burns your mana, but the Shea kind of provides you with a lot of mana, so if you have her in your team, and you should, then this one is an easy pick. Let's see what else. All allies take magic damage equal to 10% of their maximum HP every second, and physical damage the same. Now, when you first read this sounds pretty scary, like it says that you would be like dying in 10 seconds, but I found that it's actually a lot less so. Usually nobody is really close to dying except your tank, and then this doesn't really affect them that much. So these are also fairly safe picks. It doesn't make the fight too much harder. That was my experience with it. Reduces the damage dealt to enemies of ally melee heroes or ranged heroes by 30% each. 30% is a big reduction, so again you will need a good DPS hero to pick this option for the type that you are using. Like if you are using a castle, then this will reduce his damage too. You cannot use this then, or if you are running say a Pantheon, which I did on my ult, then you would not take this one, but it's not too bad. Reduces heal rate of all allies. Again, a fairly safe pick. Your healers should have no issue to top off everyone, because heals are so strong that if you do not die to a one hit, then usually you will not die, and when you die it happens so fast that it's not about not enough healing. So this one is a fairly safe pick, I found. Reduces the magic damage and physical damage that the boss takes. Again, depends if you have the DPS or not. You can just pick the one that you are not gonna use, but if you are going for the maximum amount of points, then you will need to pick this too. It makes the run harder, so you definitely will need at least a maxed out DPS to run with all of these options enabled, but it's doable. Periodically reduces attack of all allies by 3%. This is a bit tricky. If you have the DPS and the supports build, then yeah, you can take this one. It's not terribly bad, but again, it depends how long you drag out the fight. If you were looking at the top list, then some people clear the whole fight in like a single minute, so this won't affect them too much. But yeah, it can be a pain to have. Reduces the duration of CC effects inflicted on the boss by 50%. Now this boss isn't really about CC, there is really not that much benefit to CCing him as far as I recall, so this is a fairly safe pick. We always had this up, so yeah, this one is a safe pick. Increases all crit resistance of the boss by 500. Yeah, I mean, this is also fairly safe. If you have enough crit buffers or you can over crit your DPS, then this should not be an issue. Certain characters like, say, Mediana is really good on this boss because she brings, she protects your DPS from being killed by the goblins, so this can be pretty useful. Or she brings a lot of crit chance too, so she can be very useful here. And then this crit resistance is not that big of a deal. Periodically increases attack of the boss by 3%. Again, if you drag out the fight too long, then the boss will start hitting harder and harder, together with the 50% increase, and then later down the line with some of the defense reductions of the tank and stuff like that. It can be quite scary towards the end when the boss will just hit you so hard. But yeah, I have taken this option when I was clearing with my alts, so as long as you don't take too long and have a decent tank, then this should be fine. The boss heals his own HP equal to 2.5% maximum every second. Now this one is a hell lot of healing. You really do need the maximum amount of healing reduction that you can carry. Solar Stone is really good. Having an archer, Estelle is really good here because she is a very powerful buffer, and she can bring her tier 2 mortal wound perk. But I've also seen people run stuff like Mora, for instance, for the health reduction. If you can guarantee that the boss will never heal, then this is a really good option to get. It's 1200 points and then multiplied by the 2.5, so this gives you a lot of points, as you can see, but only if you can really guarantee that the boss will not be healing, at least not too much. If it's on for a long time, his health will just skyrocket, and remember, he does have a lot of health, so this can really mess you up if you have it on and you cannot guarantee that the boss doesn't get heals. But as you can see, we are already at 38k points, and there are still plenty of options here left, and these final ones are the ones that give the most points. Allies cannot lifesteal. This wasn't really a big deal because you have healing, and you don't need to heal through damage. Your DPS doesn't really need to heal through damage, because if they get hit, they usually die anyway. It might be with someone who I don't know if anyone relies on lifesteal really. I haven't found any issue with having this up, because if the goblins hit my my DPS, then they either are protected through the Mediana or Lovril skills, or they will die anyway. So this wasn't really an issue. You can pick this safely. Let's say reduces shield of all allies by 75%. Yeah, I mean, this can be a bit painful, especially towards the end when the archer goblins appear that hit your tank, and I think they ignore defense or just shred defense, I forgot, but they do hurt, and it happened that my shield just broke and my shock meme just died because he isn't terribly well geared. But yeah, you can pick this too. In most cases, it's only your tank that will be taking most of the damage, and of course the character that is targeted by the goblins. So yeah, this is a fairly, if you have decent shielders, then this is also fairly safe. Now this one, the next one, this is something that I would consider not picking. This is one that I didn't pick on my alts, because it means that you will need a very well geared tank, and very optimally geared tank for this fight, to be able to run without this option. So if you find that your tank is dying, this is the first option that I would leave off on top of the 50% attack, which is a lot less points than this one. But this is very powerful. It will hurt your tanks a lot if you do not have any defense. In a bit we will also look at the at a tank that was built or wearing gear that is very good for this particular fight. So yeah, this is an option that I would consider not picking unless you have a really well built tank. So this is the first one that I think can really mess you up, on top of the healing one, if you cannot stop that. All allies cannot receive positive effects. Yeah, this is the first of the 1500 point options. It really depends on your team whether you can run this or not. do remember that a lot of stuff, but what this means, if you remember it from the labyrinth for instance, that anything that's dispellable will get immediately dispelled from your character. So for instance, a fallen Frey shield will be instantly removed, but you can still get buffs that cannot be removed. So for instance, Lucikiel shield or a Shamilla shield or Evan shield. Yeah, there are a lot of shields because shields are important, especially in this fight. So for this, you can only really use this one if you have a DPS that doesn't rely on self buffs that are dispellable and that can live through the goblins or burst down the incoming goblins without dying. Because at this point, if you choose this one, then for instance your Mediana S3 will not be applied, it will get dispelled right away, and then your DPS might die when they get targeted by the goblins. So again, one of the tougher effects, also one that you can leave out. Oh sorry, this was damage reduction effect, so this is toughness, but yeah, ignore defense and toughness are the two that can be pretty tough. You can run this one actually. This is usually you can get by without toughness on your characters. Ignore defense is tougher a bit because that takes more preparation to actually run. You can run without toughness on your tanks, but it's very hard to do so without defense. The boss periodically dispels negative effects inflicted upon self. This one is not too bad. So this one is actually you can you can enable this one, and it's not terribly hard to have it. Something to consider is that some of your healing disabling effects can also be dispelled, and that means that if the boss will heal, and even if it takes like a moment to reapply, the boss will heal, and it will make the fight a lot longer and more difficult. So yeah, only pick this one if you are really sure of your DPS and that you can debuff the boss, but otherwise it's not too bad to have. Like or if your DPS doesn't require debuffs on the buff, on the buff. Why did I say that? Keep guys. So on the boss to actually do damage. There are of course some characters who need to like apply stacks and whatever, and if these get continuously dispelled, that can be pretty bad for you. The dispel is about every 10 seconds, so it's not impossible, but it does make the fight harder. So again, if you are struggling with the fight, you can leave this on. Also depends on your DPS and which options you have selected before. Like you could take this one and not take the healing one and still get more points. And then reduces the damage dealt to enemies of the ally with the highest attack by 75%. Yeah, again, kind of depends which the DPS you have and which buffs you want to apply. If you already picked, for instance, they cannot receive buffs, then this can be an interesting pick. You could technically run like someone who is like say an Evan, and then make them the attack bait, and then have him also tank the goblins while having the highest attack and receiving this debuff. So if you have a very well built Evan, for instance, then you could use him, or a Fallen Frey too in some cases. Then you could also use them to bait this shield or this debuff and just shield through the goblins as you do. So yeah, if you pick everything, all of these, then you should be able to hit 62k. Okay, so that's the maximum that you can have. But as said, some of these are pretty hard, especially the ignore defense and the cannot receive buffs. So these are the hardest ones, and these are the ones that we actually skipped when we were doing the group battle too, because it just makes the fight a lot harder. One more thing about the toughness ignore, that as far as we could see, the ones that say the boss really do mean just the boss. So like the ads around it will not be affected by this. It's just the boss themselves, or himself in this case, who will do the ignore defense and the ignore toughness attacks. Still, that can be pretty tough when your tank just goes in and instantly dies, and we are talking about very well built tanks here, because the boss will hit very hard. Now let's see a tank that was used in a very high setup run. Let me just switch to a screenshot I've made of a Guildie's tank that was used to clear hell mode with a lot of added penalties. So let's switch over to that real quick. So as you can see, this is a Glenvis here, not someone that most people would use on this fight, because most would actually run with Shakmei for physical DPS, or perhaps a Jane, or even a Mora for the heal reduction on the magic side. So those would be probably the most common choices, but our guildie had a Glenvis used for this, and as you can see, it's a very well built Glenvis. That's 8-20, at least 10 star. She does have a lot of health in this setup, almost 17 million, and then you can see that she has an insane amount of physical dodge for this specific fight, so she will not get hit a lot. But still, it's RNG. There is like a 25% chance, near 25% chance that she gets hit, and she can get hit a couple times in a row, so you can see some fancy burst damage on her. To counter that, she does have a lot of block, P block, and P block def to reduce any incoming damage that she does not dodge. So that's important to keep her alive. And I forgot to scroll down before making the screenshot, but I believe she has probably at least one P toughness rune to reduce the damage from the incoming ads on this particular fight. Now, interestingly, we just received 4 gear selectors with the balance packages for Celica and Lias. So technically, you could build yourself this exact same set with these kind of stats, and then you could have a decent shot at going at this boss. She is wearing a solar stone to reduce the healing of the boss, but one solar stone will not be enough. You will definitely need at least one archer to reduce the healing as well, or some additional debuffs. So let's move back a bit to the boss screen itself, and let's talk a little bit about what kind of team you want to actually clear this. So let's create the room. Okay, no open room. This was some, I'm not even sure if I tried this, maybe I was just testing this. So let's see what actually works. Shakmei, as we said, is a pretty good tank if you are running physical. Share is very important. If you are not taking the Dispel perk, then Fallen Fray, of course, is a very powerful healer, and she keeps your team alive while also providing some very fancy buffs for you. So definitely would say Fallen Fray will be a good choice here. Now, if you either do not do take that perk, or you just want to live more easily, then Evan is actually a very powerful choice. Let's remove Vero because she's actually not that good here. We just tried for more damage. But yeah, you could pick Evan because with his undispellable shield he can keep both you and your DPS alive, so that's quite important to have. I would consider either a Lovril or a Mediana, depends how much you want to rely on the unkillable perks from these. So S3 Mediana, S2 Lovril with the perk will let your highest attacker not die. This is how we used to do this challenge raid. This was the first challenge raid actually, and that was how you did, how you dealt with all the goblinettes that attack your highest attacker. So having one of those, or even both of those if you want, in your team can be pretty beneficial. I had them actually on auto, and what I did was that when you can either really kill the goblins really fast, or you can rely on those two to keep you alive. Now the goblins also CC, so you will need some CC immunity, and Chair and Estelle can provide it. Both of them are also pretty good buffers, and again, if you do not run the Dispel debuff or Dispel negative effect on the boss, then that can be pretty helpful. They will help you do a lot more damage. What they are set for the resets can be really good. You will need 1 DPS, so let's see what actually works here. On EU, with Mr. Waitim, I have seen someone use Rebel Clouds, and he can do quite a lot of damage, especially funny because every time the boss dispels the debuff from himself, Rebel Clouds reapplies his passive from his S4, and that can do a lot of damage. So he is one pretty good choice. You have to be a bit careful with melee characters because the boss has some very powerful melee attacks that cleave, so will hit your melee DPS too. And that can be quite painful. Now, one other character that you can use a lot of melee characters. It kind of depends. The top one is actually the anime protagonist Castle. He does so much damage, it's incredible, like way more. He did way more than the Rebel class I have seen this run with. Castle makes this quite good. Of course, you need to have a built one, and because he's quite tanky too, he's one of the best DPS here. What else could you use? If we move down a little, I have seen Panseron being used, mainly because her AoE hits can clear out the goblins, and she does a lot of boss damage even when it's single target. So Pansy is quite a good choice. It's just that her long cooldowns can be a bit painful. And on the other hand, she's not in melee range, so that's one other option that I would consider. And I've also seen Lucikiel being used, who might be melee range, but he has an undispellable shield, so even on the harder settings he can survive the hits from the boss and actually not die, so that's quite important with him. Also, he has a lot of ignored defense damage, and he relies mostly on his auto attacks, which is very important when your cooldowns are constantly being increased. So yeah, you will need some AoE damage or cleave damage to clear out the ads, and you will need to have enough damage to clear that massive HP of the boss, especially if you have if you are attacking or if you are taking that buff to his health. Heroes that will be beneficial are the ones that can be CC immune themselves if you are taking those perks, or you really have to time your shields right to be able to kill the goblins before they break your shield. If you do not have the Dispel debuff on you, then you can run with Shea or Estelle. Both of them provide CC immunity, so your DPS will not be knocked around. They will have some time to clear out the goblin ads. So yeah, guys, this basically sums it up. Getting into the 40k range is not terribly hard if you have a decent DPS. With that I mean TM gear, 8-20, and at least 5-star unique weapon, and then the good unique treasure. You also will need good supports with good good artifacts and good gears. My ult was able to clear with like maybe 2 minutes left or something like that, which is reasonable. It didn't cost me too much molding. I did it both with Pansy, and my other account did with Lucikiel. I'll still look around on this account, on my main account, what I can use. I have tried with Serio, but her damage seemed a bit off. I might try it again later on. So yeah, this is my not so short review of this new challenge raid. I hope you find it helpful. As said, if you are struggling with health, there is no shame in downgrading to hard mode. It is a hell lot more easier than hell mode. So if you just want to get the clear and maybe pick up like the 2 random soul stones or the selector and some other stuff, it's perfectly fine if you are not at the stage of the game yet where you can run this on hell. Getting it done for 30k points on hard is quite doable, even with less invested teams. Like less invested gear than on auto mode teams can do that if you have the right heroes. So I think you should be able to get good rewards out of this. It takes some setting up, and that can be a bit painful for some people. Some people do like this kind of challenges. I personally am somewhere in between, but it's a good stuff. I like the content, and I'm looking forward to be carried by Mr. Yon and Mr. Wei again. They just don't know about that yet. Alright, no, I will run with many actually, or I don't know. But yeah, guys, this has been it for now. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. This has been Cloudie. Bye bye.